Hello Smashers and Smiley Faces, my name is TV Skyn, and the last video I did was a rather angry rant about some shitty business practices in the game industry that was necessary for me to get off my chest, but it's not something I particularly enjoy doing. So we're going to be talking about something I love, and we're going to be talking about something I love about it. We're going to be talking about Smash Bros. We're going to be talking about the animation techniques, especially the effects animation that's being used in that game to give it its distinctive look and flavor. In order to do that, I'm borrowing a little bit of footage from the Game Explained YouTube channel, which you'll find a link to both this video and their YouTube channel down in the description. And I'm doing that because they, in turn, have borrowed all of the footage in this video directly from the Nintendo Smash Bros. Website. Now, I went there myself, and I wanted to record directly from the footage that was being shown on the website, but unfortunately, it's not really an option. Like, the website was really not set up to allow me to full screen anything or to allow me to frame by frame my way through things, which is what I like to do in these videos. I like to be able to do stuff like this, which just on the official website, it was just not an option. So borrowing a little bit of footage from Game Explained, I really hope they don't mind. And I don't really have an agenda or anything, any theme or anything in mind with this video. I just want to be happy and talk about something I love and talk about the things I love about it and analyze a little bit and try and figure out some stuff, and hopefully that'll be interesting along the way. I very much invite you to join me. But one of the things that I did notice, which was part of the reason why I wanted to talk about this, is something I've noticed a lot in more modern fighting games is the introduction of 2D animation techniques into 3D fighting game animation. And this is something that's spectacularly on display in a game like Dragon Ball FighterZ, which just is specifically modeled around translating the look of a 2D anime to a 3D fighting game, which is something Arc System Works have become absolutely the best in the business at doing. See also the Guilty Gear games. But there are other ways of doing this than just the Arc System Works approach of completely translating 3D models into something that looks completely two-dimensional, even though it isn't. And that's some of the stuff we're going to be talking about now. Back in the 90s, back when Toy Story first came out, I assume everybody's seen Toy Story. One of the troubles that Pixar had was, in those very early days of animation, it was really not possible to animate believable humans. The technology, the techniques, the technical ability was simply not there to do it, which is something that's heavily on display in one of their very first animation shorts, Tin Toy, which features a toy being chased by a baby, which looks like something out of someone's worst prenatal nightmare. It's just absolutely horrible. And even in Toy Story, the human characters like Andy, like Sid, were not... They didn't look great. Like, they didn't look fantastic. You can kind of ignore it because they're in the film so relatively little, but they do look absolutely horrible. And so one of the solutions Pixar came up with in order to solve that problem of not being able to animate realistic humans is, well, we'll animate toys instead, because toys are made of plastic, they're made of ceramic, they're made of all these inorganic materials, and so if we animate them and they look a little bit stiff, they look a little bit plastic, they look a little bit fake, that's perfectly fine. And that's one of the things I love about the original Toy Story, is how it solves that particular problem in animation. But the reason I bring that up is one of the limitations outside of just animating humans, one of the limitations that was very much present in the early days of 3D animation was an inability to apply a lot of the principles of animation that had been developed for 2D animation. Essentially, stretching out a character or sort of breaking the character rig and sort of really stretching them and deforming them was really rather difficult in the early days. It requires a lot of technical finagling in order to really make that work. It was a lot easier to just manipulate the model as it is. And for that reason, like that's part of the reason why a lot of early animation looks so... early 3D animation looks so stiff in comparison to 2D, because there was a lot of techniques available to 2D animators that 3D animation hadn't yet replicated. Those times have changed, and that whole extended intro, the whole point of that was to talk a little bit about Mario's very first move in this film, in this little character trailer. This is his sort of jumping spin attack. I don't remember if it's his forward air or what it is, but take a look at what happens here at the end. Did you catch that? Look, when Mario unfolds, like the last hit of the combo thing, is he kind of folds in on himself, and then he unfolds like, what? Really powerfully. And he deals a knockback and some extra damage there at the end. But watch what happens to his body. You catch that, right? He inflates a little bit, and then he deflates. He grows a little bit bigger, like a balloon, and then he deflates again. This is squash and stretch, essentially. This is an inflation and deflation technique that requires you to deform the character model in a way that in the 90s wouldn't have been possible. It became possible pretty quickly because animators did a hell of a lot of work to make it possible to do in the 3D engines that they had. And it's employed here in order to help sell the power of Mario unfolding himself, is because if you take a look at just here, he's going to start to unfold himself from here. Watch his movement. Right? That's not exactly like a huge, punchy movement he's got there. He just kind of unfolds himself, so why does that even look like it has any kind of an impact? Well, there's two things happening. First of all, much like if you watch his rotation here, he doesn't really rotate more than one... He rotates exactly 2 times over the course of this whole jump. 2 times. That's how much he spins around. But watch it in motion. Right? It looks like he spins around a lot more than 2 times when you see him at full speed. But he doesn't. And the reason why it looks like he spins around a lot more than he does is, again, a 2D animation techniques. It's these speed lines that surround him. Because they're moving around alongside him, they give the impression of a character that's moving a lot faster than they actually are. And it's exactly the same principle that's being applied when Mario unfolds himself. If it was just the motion of unfolding himself with absolutely nothing else happening, it would look kind of pathetic and have no impact whatsoever. But what gives it its impact is, first of all, the little inflation deflation, which suggests that he unleashes so much power that it actually distorts his body, and it kind of has to go blah, 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 like as though some kind of big impact had just hit it as well as it unleashes its power. The second thing is this shockwave animation in the background, and it's literally a shockwave. As you can see, there's this circular shape in the middle, almost as though this is a shockwave of air being pushed away from his body, and that's part of what makes that hit look powerful at all. We're gonna look at the Game Explain logo a couple of times here. See that? Like, that looks like something that if you got hit by that, it would really hurt. But of course, as we've already seen, just looking at the animation itself, there's really not that much going on. He doesn't even really punch or hit. He just woof, does a little jazz hands pose there. And I love the effects animation in Smash Bros. Because that's like, it's at least half of the impact of a lot of the abilities in Smash comes specifically from the gorgeous effects work that's being done here. Like here, for instance, is a classic anime effect, which is these shockwaves that happen as Mario hits the ground and then get followed by these little dust clouds that sort of sell the impact of his landing. And this has a couple of effects in the gameplay. One of the effects it has is that it makes it a lot easier to follow when someone is on the ground and when they are in the air, because anytime they're on the ground, it's going to be preceded by, I think he was up in the air a little previously in this clip. When a character lands heavily from a jump, there's going to be a little bit of dust animation around their feet, apparently, unless they cancel into a move. But again, when he unleashes this rotational move with the cape, right? And again, the cape itself doesn't really move that fast. It stops here for a moment as it's selling the impact. And look at these impact frames. Look at all this lighting effect that's being used. And it's just a cape. Like, it doesn't really do any damage to Donkey Kong. It just turns him around. But look at all these effects working overtime in order to make this relatively simple motion that Mario is making feel a lot more impactful than it would be without all the effects going on. Also, look at how Mario, he connects with the cape here. Now look at his character model as we frame by frame our way through it. He freezes in place. Like, he just does not move at all until the impact has resolved and he's ready to complete the swing of the cape, which happens right around here, which is when he finally completes the motion as Donkey Kong gets turned around. And again, I just adore the effects work in this thing, because you can see all of this impact stuff, which is telling you as a player very, very clearly, okay, something has happened here. There has been an impact. A thing has occurred that has an effect. Donkey Kong gets turned around, and as he tries to land the punch, here again, some anime effect to really sell the power of that punch. Wham! And then Mario, as he charges up, and again, every time something bright light like this comes on screen, it automatically draws the eye to the action. And you see this rotating light, and it tells you here something impactful is happening, something important that's worth paying attention to is happening. And that's part of the signaling, like Mario is about to charge up a heavy smash attack. And as an opponent, you need to be aware of when that is happening. Therefore, a whole bunch of lighting effects are instituted. And another thing I absolutely adore in New Smash is this stuff. Like, they've really gone all in on selling the last hit effect, which is something we saw in the tournament that was played in Smash Brothers after the reveal of the game, was that whenever there's a one-on-one fight and someone lands what could be a compelling killing blow on the opponent, the whole screen will zoom in and it will add a hell of a lot of extra lighting effects to an already powerful, impactful hit to really sell the idea that this is a strong hit, something's about to happen, something important, someone is about to get launched off stage. And another wonderful visual addition to the new Smash Bros. Is these colored trails of smoke that follows a character when they get launched off the stage. Now, the trails of smoke have been in the game for a very long time. They've always been used to sort of indicate when someone gets knocked off the stage in a hurry. But the clever thing that's being done now is that these are very thick, very obvious, very clear trails of smoke, and they are subtly colored in the color of that is associated with whatever player gets knocked off stage. And again, look at the gorgeous effects work on Donkey Kong as he's getting knocked off stage here. He breaks the sound barrier right here. Boom. And off stage. You can see it again here. Kirby is trying to land some kind of an attack on Mario and failing. And you can see again with the lighting effects, really selling the idea that something important happened here, specifically that Mario managed to dodge. And as he pulls out Flood, once again using those lighting effects. And I really love, because one of the clever things they've done with Flood is there's no 3D water in Flood's animation. All of this is, I think it's essentially, well, they are 3D objects, but they're essentially 2D images mapped onto three-dimensional planes that are just being layered over and kind of cycled in and out in the game. But there's no, like, 3D animated water anywhere at all. Like, it's not like they've simulated fluid physics or anything. They've just animated the effects of the water pretty much by hand, with hand-drawn animation techniques, and a whole hell of a lot of particle effects in order to sell it. But for one thing, that cuts down on processor time, and it also gives this wonderful graphic, cartoony look to the whole proceeding, which is part of what sells the Smash Bros. Aesthetic to me, is that ultimately it is a cartoon fighter. It looks like you're doing cartoony stuff in it. Anyway, let's move on from Mario. Let's just let this play out, and let's pause again once there's something interesting to talk about. His final smash isn't really that interesting to talk about. I do like that Donkey Kong has become a lot more expressive in the new game. Like, he has a lot more different facial expressions. He makes a lot of different interesting expressions when he gets hit and when stuff happens to him, which I quite enjoy. And here again, I love rapid punch animations because they're really difficult to do right. And Donkey Kong has a really, really good one. This video is 60 frames per second, by the way, so we're gonna get, like, all of the frames of animation that go into this. But take a look at what happens. Like, this looks like it's just lightning punches just happening at absolutely extreme, impossible speeds. So let's take a look at that frame by frame and see if it's actually lightning punches happening at extreme impossible speeds. First, we have this lovely impact. I love the color inversion, which again is a technique borrowed from anime, I think, which really, really communicates to the player that, oh, you got hit by the final smash, bro. You are just about to get all of your shit fucked up. Your shit is getting fucked up so bad that the entire world changed all of its colors in order to accommodate how much of an ass-kicking you're about to get. And by the way, Donkey Kong's hands change size. You can see here, as he's pulled back for the punch, that hand is one size, but here, when it's actually hitting Samus, it has suddenly grown substantially in volume. This, again, is a squash and stretch technique. Because the hand is bigger, we perceive that it has more impact because it's heavier. Like, it can deliver more power when it's bigger, when it has a greater mass. We know this instinctually, and animators exploit that in animations like this. And first, it also helps track where Donkey Kong's hands are, that they grow a little bit bigger. That makes them easier for the eye to track. during all this rapid punch motion, but it also helps sell the impact of what he's doing. This is something you can see being used in video games all the way back with Super Mario 64, actually, where Mario, when he punches and kicks, his hands and his feet actually get bigger as the impacts of the hits land. It's one of the early 3D techniques that were used effectively to communicate power and fighting. But see, as you can see here, Donkey Kong isn't really moving too fast for the naked eye. Like, he's moving pretty fast, but it's still just punch, punch, punch. It's not like there's 100 punches in the air at the same time. So why does it look so frantic and so superpowered? Well, once again, the effects have a lot to do with it, because see what happens is, as Donkey Kong lands a punch, you can see there's an effect here that surrounds his arm and communicates the impact of the hit. But watch what happens when he pulls his arm back. The effect stays in the air while he's pulled back for the next punch. And when he lands the next punch, the effect from the previous punch is still there. And it's not until he connects with the next punch that the previous effect goes away. And this happens over and over again, where he essentially leaves an after image of his previous punch, which just kind of overlaps or just hangs around alongside the next punch animation. And that's part of what sells the absolute maddening sort of the sense of hundreds and hundreds of punches landing, is that even though Donkey Kong himself is doing 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, because of the after images, it looks like he's doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So in a visual sense, from a spectator's perspective, it almost kind of doubles how many hits we perceive, even though, you know, there aren't actually as many hits as we think. Which is just a clever use of animation techniques that's, again, something that's been used in fighting games. Like, I remember seeing that same kind of effect back in Marvel vs. Capcom. I think that was probably my first introduction to those kinds of animation techniques in fighting games, but it's lovely to see it used here, and used so efficiently. I also love the effects on Link's sword, because, again, there's a lot of use of smear. This right here is a smear frame. It's going to be easier to see once Ganon moves his ass a little bit. There. You can see how Link's sword kind of leaves a trail in its wake. In 2D animation, that's called a smear frame. So called because you're literally smearing the object that's moving. And this does a couple of things. It helps with a very quick motion. It's sort of a visual indicator to the audience, the people who are looking, that what path did the weapon take, or the object take, to get there. And we can see this has this long curvy path in order to get to where it is, which sells the idea of this very swift sword stroke that's almost too fast for the naked eye, but you kind of get the after image of the sword stroke as it has happened. And that's something I just love seeing how they use it here, because you can see when Link is doing this really, really fast motion, which is what his sword swing is, it is a really, really fast motion, which can be hard to track. Like, without the effect, it would be really hard to track exactly where Link's sword is at all times, but because the smear adds so much extra surface area, essentially, to a sword, that helps your eye track what the sword is doing. And from a gameplay perspective, that can help give you a lot more clarity about exactly where Link's sword is during this animation, which can help you figure out where you shouldn't be in order to dodge this animation when it happens. And as the hit lands, see how you get this crescent-shaped shockwave that kind of radiates out from the sword, which is, again, a technique that's very heavily used in anime, where if you want a sword hit to look especially powerful and sharp, what you essentially do is you send a crescent-shaped shockwave out from it somehow. Like, you connect a crescent-shaped shockwave to it, and that's almost as though sort of the sharpness of the sword is cleaving through the air in front of him, which is just a very clever way to do it. And you can also see that the cleave, this sharpness animation, it follows, it's almost like it's a second sword slash that's kind of happening in the air, where you can see it follows a curve and then it disappears. Which is honestly just kind of lovely. Let's see if we can get a little bit more of those upswings that Link does. Or maybe, actually, let's take a look at the bomb. Because I love the animation of the bombs in Breath of the Wild. And that's actually quite good here as well. Because you can see it starts with a little sphere, that expands a little bit, and then you get this second sphere kind of radiating out on top of it. And then when we get the, like, this is the full hitbox, I think, of the bomb. And in order to show us exactly where that hitbox is, they make the whole thing glow white, just for a little bit. So that you can see very, very clearly contrasted with everything else in the scene exactly where the hitbox is on this thing. And it also helps sell the power of the impact, because it communicates the idea that there's so much heat going on that the very air itself is glowing white, and that's actually just a very effective technique. And by the way, remember how we talked about spinning with Mario, and how adding these animation effects can help sell the idea that he's spinning a lot more than he is? Let's take a look at how much Link actually spins. He hits once. One spin. Two spin. Three spin. And end. He spins around 3 times. How many times does it look like he spins around when we watch this in motion? It looks like he spins around a lot more than just 3 times, right? And again, that's all the hard work of selling that motion comes down to the many, many animation frames that are being, the many, many effect frames that are being used to kind of heighten. You can see how, as he spins around here, there's this one thing that kind of curves upwards around him, but then at the same time, his sword starts a second curve around his body this way, and then you can see again, as his sword passes over here, that curve continues downwards, and meanwhile his sword is spinning up over it, and that kind of gives the impression that he's spinning around multiple times, because there's this one swing going up this way, and then there's that other swing going down this way, and then there's one swing going up that way, and then there's the other swing going down, and one going up, and so it's constantly crossing over itself. Which really helps sell the idea that there's more sword swings going on than we can actually see. And that's just, it's so clever, because one of the problems with 3D animation is when animation is like happening at 60 frames per second like this. In 2D animation, when you're doing 12, 16 frames per second, you can kind of get away with skipping frames, because that's what you're doing already, essentially. You can kind of get away with skipping a few frames in order to help sell the idea that things are happening faster than they really are. But in 60 frames per second, that's really not so much an option. And you kind of have to let the thing happen at the 60 frames per second frame rate, but you can kind of cheat your way out of that by using these effects to sell the idea that there's more motion than what's actually going on. Samus, once again, with a lovely demonstration of that general principle. Because as you can see, she doesn't actually spin around very much when she's doing her jumping spin, right? She's just kind of rotating at a normal pace, but again, the speed lines around her help sell the idea that she's spinning a lot faster than she really is. And with Samus, I'm particularly interested in seeing how they're doing... Yeah, see how they're doing the charge-up effect on her weapon here. So we have the glowing circle. That's sort of our constant, which is growing slowly as the weapon picks up more and more charge. And then secondarily to that, take a look at first the very blue outline that's happening right here. Take a look at that, because that doesn't change between these 2 frames, or this one, or this one, or this one, or this one. Now it changes, and then it stays. Now it changes, then it stays. Now it changes, then it stays. And that's interesting, because take a look at what happens in the middle of the circle. Take a look at this thing. That's moving constantly. That's moving on every single frame, but the lighting effects behind it aren't moving. And the purple effect that you can see behind all of that is moving at a different rate than everything else once again. And when you have these multiple elements that are... Otherwise, they're just like flat color planes, really. They're just kind of flat images of color being inserted onto the 3D plane, but because they're all moving at these very different speeds and at these very different, tempos to each other, they really help sell the idea that there's this chaotic buildup of power going on. Now watch how it looks in motion, right? You can see that you get this erratically kind of vibrating sphere of power that's just sort of barely being held under control. Something which is also reinforced by, you can see all the little bursts of power just kind of flying out from behind it. And you can see as she charges up her weapon more and more of these spiky background effects get added on. You can see here this purplish, bluish glow First we have the blue and the bright purple, right? And then boom, here comes a sort of a more dark blue effect added on top, and boom, here one more gets added on top. So you get this layer upon layer upon layer upon layer of stuff that's vibrating at different frequencies, which is what makes that power buildup look so strong and so powerful and so chaotic. And here again, just layering the anime effects all over this thing. This is exactly the kind of thing that if you pause a trigger anime at the right time during a hit, you're going to see this exact stuff going on. And look how much is happening here. Just, they're not even restraining themselves a little bit. You've got this black frame that just kind of happens, and you've got light, and you've got fire, and you go... And this is part of what makes Smash Bros. So lovely to look at. And it's also kind of, from a gameplay perspective, I think it's also kind of important that there's this much animation going on, because the default way that Smash Bros. Looks is not quite as up close as it is in these trailers. Like, default in Smash, you're zoomed out quite far from the action, especially if you're doing like 4 players or 8 players all at once. The camera has to zoom out really, really far in order to allow everybody to be on screen as much as possible. And when you are zoomed out that much, the character models themselves can get kind of small and difficult to read. So it's important that the important things that happen, i.e. attacks landing or not landing, have to be announced really, really clearly with the effects and animations that are available to the game. And so they just go ham with them. Like, they just go over the top with every little hit animation, has a whole bunch of effects going on with it, which is something you can see again here with Wolf. He's about to do his basic punch on the Ice Climbers, right? See if we can catch him as he winds up for that, right? This is his basic punch. Like, this is just, he's tapping the A button. That's all that's happening here, right? But look what the effects are telling us are happening is, wow, kapow, sham, badoom, pow, pow, pow. Like, it's really going all the way over the top to sell us that every single hit that happens here is incredibly powerful. Oh, and by the way, here's a clever little effect. Fox has this multi-kick thing he does, and this is something you can see happening with Chun-Li in Street Fighter as well. In order to sell that there's, like, just dozens and dozens of kicks going on, even though you can see here, he does 1, he does 2, he does 3, he does 4, he does 5, he does 6, and 7, right? There's 7 kicks. That's how much he kicks them in the span of this little animation. Take a look at how it looks in motion. Once again, how many more kicks you get just by adding these effects. And it's kind of the same principles that were underlying the Donkey Kong effect, except rather than him kicking and then leaving an after image, the after images are happening even before he hits. You can see there's one kick coming out from the middle here. There's one going down below. And as he changes, you can see kicks coming out on top, kick coming out on the bottom, indicating that he has kicked, even though his character model hasn't actually moved. And that's a huge part of what makes the movement of Smash characters seem so powerful, is that they generate a lot more effect in the world than just the motion of their characters. Like, there's a whole bunch of stuff that happens external to any actual motion that the character makes, which I really, really love. And I also love the thunder effects on Pikachu. Remember how we talked about layering different effects with Samus when she charges up? The same thing is happening at Pikachu's feet here. You can see these different colors that just kind of get layered and layered and layered and layered, different layers of different colors over and over and over again to sell the idea that you've got this crackling power going on. And I just adore, I adore the effects animation in Smash. It's such a huge part of what makes Smash such a compelling game to look at, is all these effects. And they're on screen, like, so little. Like, we've been frame by framing these to take a really close look at them and how well they're designed. But when you're playing, as you can see in full motion, you really don't see most of it. You really don't get to see a whole lot of these effects happening because they happen too fast for the eye to really follow. But in motion, because it's all so well put together and so well balanced with each other, you get so much power in every individual hit. Every individual hit announces itself on screen with profound obviousness, which is really, really important. I also love the kill frames. Like, when you get that powerful hit that's sure to knock your opponent off the screen, how the entire camera just zooms in and goes, take a look at this. And take a look at what they do with the character models, by the way. Fox has just received an incredibly powerful impact that's about to knock him off the stage, but look what his character model does. It really doesn't do anything. Like, he doesn't change pose, he doesn't change posture, he doesn't seem to be receiving the impact, except what they do is they essentially just teleport his character model to a bunch of different positions, so that they physically wobble his character model, essentially. Which looks profoundly weird in a lot of ways. But the effect of that it has, take a look at how it looks when Ness actually hits him. Right? So what you get an impression of is that a lot of power is delivered to Fox, but actually that power actually affecting him is kind of delayed. He's kind of vibrating. It's almost like he's charging up all the energy that Ness is imparting on him with the impact, until finally he can't hold on to it anymore. Wait, that's not Fox, that's Wolf. Ah, I've been wrong this whole time. And he gets launched off the screen as the power explodes out from under him. And look at these lovely, look at the loveliness of these particle effects. That's just really good. And again, the most important thing that ever happens in Smash is a player getting knocked off stage. Like, that's the most important moment of any given match, is when someone loses a stock. So the game announces when someone loses a stock very, very clearly. Like, you are not in doubt about when someone is losing a stock. Anyway, this has been like half an hour of me just vaguely appreciating Smash for the animation that they've put into the game. I especially love Captain Falcon. Because this is one of the other things we should perhaps talk about before we end the video is... again, like I mentioned, Smash Bros. Characters can become really small on screen when there's multiple people doing stuff at the same time, and the camera is zoomed out really far. And one of the ways that Smash tries to counteract that problem is essentially by having the characters have extremely over-the-top animation. Take a look at the Captain Falcon, right? He's done the down throw, now he's about to dash for the follow-up. So he goes into this super low dash, like just really low to the ground, and then as he's about to jump, he goes into this anticipation animation as he's about to charge him for the jump. He's not gonna jump 20 feet in the air here. He's just gonna do a short hop and then connect with a couple of kicks. But look how much he just crouches down, and then how much he stretches out his entire body, like just how much he goes into these super extreme poses that are just really, really, as he charges up for the hit, wham, all the way out. And that's something with a lot of the Smash characters, is that a hell of a lot of their motions, a hell of a lot of their movements are extremely exaggerated. And again, that's all about, I think, making sure that there's clarity about when someone does something. Then you can see it happening, because the character doesn't make subtle movements. They don't make any small motions that are just kind of meh, and then they land a hit. Everything is big, everything is over the top, everything is huge in the motions that a lot of the Smash Bros. Characters do. And it's really effective from a readability perspective, like for just making it readable to people what exactly is going on, but it's also effective from the perspective of selling the hit, because when the motion is really, really exaggerated, you get more power, essentially, out of the motion. It looks like it delivers a lot more punch than it really does. Anyway, that's 33 minutes now of me just ranting happily about all the stuff I love about Smash Bros. I just needed some positivity in my life. Thank you for indulging me. Thank you for sticking with me. If you want to indulge my positivity some more, you can head on over to Patreon, and if you are able to support me with like $1 or $2 a month that you don't need for something, I don't know what you can buy with $1, like one piece of candy or something, then I would be very grateful for the assistance. It's extremely helpful to me. It's a big part of how I pay for, food. If you don't want to do that, of course, that is 100% completely okay. You can hit the like button in order to make it easier for YouTube to make people find my videos. That's also very helpful. You can subscribe. And if you didn't like this video at all, I don't know why you watched this far, but there is a dislike button down below that you can click. But I have to warn you that the dislike button is at like 400%, and it's a Lucario. So like if you flub the first hit and like he dodges you, or he manages the perfect guard, you're gonna get punished really hard. So just keep that in mind before you click on it. thank you very much for watching.